Shaolin Wing Chun comes from the Shaolin Temple, and meditation is a key part of our training. It allows us to focus and get an insight into ourselves. Self-improvement and self-development is termed as Chan. Chan is a very important part of our training. And from Chan, we learn meditation, which is the dragon part of our training. Then we have the tiger, which is the actual fighting part of our training. Each class we begin with meditation, and then we move forward into warm-up, forms, and then the content of the martial training for that period. So at this time, the students begin with meditation to clear their mind, to become focused, and to show respect. The students are performing Sien Nam Tao, which is the basic form for Wing Chun. This form is called the little idea in the beginning. By practicing this form, the student learns how to align himself with all of the reference points on the body and also upon his opponent. By doing this form continually over a period of time, they gain more insight. It's kind of layered. The first time you're doing it, when you're first learning it, you're learning the mechanics, just the movements. Then after that, you start to learn the positions on the body that have reference points. After learning the reference points, then you move to the last level of this, and that is when you gain insight into yourself and the internal and energy that you will use in a combat situation. Over a period of time, the student will evolve as they practice this form, and it becomes more and more ingrained into them and the things that they do, and then it's transferable into live action. All of our forms are done this way. First you learn the mechanics, and the internal part comes later. But we learn the mechanics, and then you move to the points on the body and on your opponent's body. These are called reference points that are later used in a combat situation. This is the second form in this series. This is called Chum Q. Chum Q means to sink the bridge, to attack the opponent. This is where you intercept the opponent as they come forward. In many martial arts, people talk about how do you get into your opponent, how do you get close enough to begin combat. And by learning this form, the same things in the previous form. You learn the reference points, the guidelines with which to govern your movements. So in Chum Q, which is called sinking the bridge, there is both strikes and kicks and all the offensive and defensive movements. Basically, there are really no defensive movements. Most of these movements are to counteract an attack that's being projected onto you. So when you do the Chum Q form, that's at a second stage, it's the same principle. You learn the mechanics, you learn the reference points, and then you progress and evolve as you learn the internal feeling, and it becomes second nature to you. This form is Bu-Ji. Bu-Ji means thrusting fingers. The thrusting fingers form is the third form in the series. This form teaches you to attack the opponent with elbows, with fingers, with all the different parts of the body. You also are taught the same thing. You start off with the basic part of the form. You learn the mechanics, you learn the movements, and then you move to the reference points, and then from the reference points you go to the internal part of the form. All of our forms have those three components. First part is the mechanics, second part is the reference points, and the third part is how to actually make application through in a combat situation. So this is the third form in the series, which is Chum Q, which is used as a higher level of training. This form has special meaning. This form is called Samjinpo. Samjinpo means 3 battle steps. This is for internal focus and to develop the tendons that are used in our strikes. The strikes that are used in Wing Chun at this level are not using the muscles, but using the tendons and whipping motion. So the tendons are developed through this process. Once these tendons are developed, they actually replace the muscles when you use a strike. So you have 2 vehicles for transmitting energy. The first vehicle is the muscle, and that is what's used basically by all martial arts, and mostly in any conflict where you're using the strikes or kicks even. In this method though, you start to develop the tendons, which are used in a whipping motion, which allows the student or the practitioner to be able to inflict more power. And that's what makes Wing Chun special. Wing Chun is developed on efficiency. The efficiency of Wing Chun is what makes it separate from other forms of martial art. And that is the key to learning this form. This apparatus is called the Muk Yang Jong. The Muk Yang Jong is specific to Wing Chun practitioners. The motions that you use come directly from your combat training. So when the practitioner uses this is similar to in other arts, like a boxer using a body bag or a speed bag or any other art that has an apparatus that they use. The purpose of this is to allow the student to become more familiar with the movements in a static situation. From this, they go into a live situation with a live opponent, and they're able to do more with movement when it becomes live. It becomes a real activity. This form is called Umbo Kyun. It has the function of teaching the student the different stances that the body will be in the combat and other training. So this form is designed strictly to teach you stances and body flow. This form is Ba Duan Jin, 8-section brocade. When Bodhidharma went to the temple, he found that the monks, after meditation for long periods of time, their bodies were very stiff. So he developed and introduced to them this form, so that after meditation they could go through the motions and kind of renew and revitalize their bodies, their mind, and their spirit. When we do sparring, it is not to beat each other up or to show superior student to one another. It's to actually see if you understand the alignments and where your strike should go, how to enter your opponent's space, and how to develop an understanding of what combat will be when you get to that level. So our sparring is a little different than other sparring. It's done to actually feel out and understand the basics of a certain range of combat. Now this is another type of sparring. This is where you go into chi sao, which is called sticky hands. The movement back and forth really is to sensitize the feeling between the forearm, the wrist, and the elbow of the student, which will be used when you intercept. So the purpose of this is not the emphasis on the strikes as much as it is on getting into a position to strike. So the movements are done that you see in this type of thing are just so that you can gain access to your opponent's space and control the space between you and your opponent. This is the basics for chi sao. This drill is a basic drill that is used to teach the student how to transition from a long kicking range all the way to a close combat range. By doing this and using both legs and arms and hands and knees and elbows, the student learns how to intercept and close in on an opponent. This is a basic Chi-Sao drill. It is not actually competing, not actually sparring. What you're learning to do is just again to feel your opponent out, to feel the strength, the power that you're opposed to be able to control the space between you and an opponent, and to be able to utilize the inner power that you have. Doing this type of a drill, you actually will experience as many of the different things that you can in a real combat situation.